It's the end of another long day. The baby is finally asleep. The house is quiet. And you're sitting there, exhausted in a way that goes beyond tired, running through the day in your head. Did I do enough? Did I respond fast enough when they cried? Was I present enough when they needed me? Did I talk to them enough? Hold them enough? Look at them the right way at the right moments? Most mothers carry this question like extra weight, this quiet, persistent worry that the simple things, picking them up, talking to them, making eye contact, touching their face, are somehow not enough. That real development requires something more, something structured, something you're probably not doing. Here's what nobody tells you. The Harvard Center on the Developing Child spent decades studying what actually builds a baby's brain. Not what educational products claim to build, not what parenting philosophies promise to build. What the neuroscience shows actually builds the neural architecture that determines how a child thinks, feels, regulates, and connects for the rest of their life. And what they found wasn't a curriculum. It wasn't a method. It wasn't anything you buy or download or enroll in. It was 5 acts. Simple, daily, ordinary acts that most mothers are already doing, without knowing what they're actually building when they do. But here's the part that changes everything. These 5 acts are not just love. They are biological expectations, needs so fundamental that the developing brain is literally wired to receive them. And when they're missing consistently over time, the foundation doesn't just stay incomplete, it builds wrong. You have been doing something extraordinary every single day without knowing it, and by the end of this video, you will. Number 1, the first act, answer when they call. Your baby makes a sound. Maybe it's a babble. Maybe it's a whimper. Maybe it's just a look. Eyes finding yours across the room, holding for a second, waiting. And you look back. You respond. You make a sound or say something, or just lean in a little closer. That exchange, that tiny, ordinary, happens 100 times a day exchange, has a name in developmental neuroscience. Serve and return. The Harvard Center on the Developing Child identifies serve and return interactions as one of the most essential processes in the construction of brain architecture. The baby serves, a sound, a gesture, a look, a cry. The adult returns, a response, a word, a touch, an acknowledgement that the signal was received. Back and forth. And every single time that loop completes, something happens inside your baby's brain that no toy, no screen, no educational product can replicate. A neural connection forms. More than 1 million new neural connections form every second in the first years of life. And the interactions, the responsive, contingent, back and forth interactions, are what determine which of those connections survive, which circuits get strengthened, which pathways become permanent parts of the architecture that will run your child's mind for the rest of their life. But here's the part that most parents never hear. The absence of serve and return doesn't just slow development, it actively harms it. When a baby's signals are consistently ignored, when they serve and nothing returns, the brain doesn't stay neutral. It activates a stress response. Cortisol floods the developing system. And if that pattern persists, something more significant happens. The baby starts to lose interest in sending signals at all. Not because they stopped needing connection, because they learned that connection doesn't come. A study published in the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry found that variations in maternal sensitivity, how consistently and accurately a mother reads and responds to her baby's cues, directly predicted the structural volume of the baby's brain. Less responsive interactions correlated with measurably smaller subcortical gray matter volume. Not behavior, not mood, brain structure. And now here's the part that should make every mother watching this take a breath. You don't have to get this right every time. Research suggests that getting it right roughly 1/3 of the time and missing it and repairing it and trying again is enough to build secure attachment and healthy brain development. 1/3. Not perfection, not constant vigilance, a consistent pattern of trying, missing, and coming back. The goal was never to be a perfect responder. It was to be a returning one. Every time you looked up from what you were doing because your baby made a sound. Every time you answered a babble with a word. Every time you turned toward them instead of away, you were serving the exact biological expectation their brain was wired to receive. You were building something, one exchange at a time. But answering their call is only the first act. Because what your face does in those moments, what it shows, what it withholds, what it communicates before a single word is spoken, is building something. The research calls the first emotional language your baby ever learns. And what happens when that language goes silent, even for 2 minutes, is one of the most disturbing findings in all of developmental psychology. Number 2, the second act, show your face. In 1975, a researcher named Edward Tronick at Harvard designed an experiment so simple it almost wasn't taken seriously. A mother and her baby interact normally, smiling, talking, making faces, responding. The baby is engaged, happy, completely locked into the exchange. Everything is working exactly as it should. Then the mother goes blank, no expression, no response, eyes open, present in the room, but nothing behind them, a face that is there but not there. What happens in the 2 minutes that follow became one of the most studied sequences of behavior in all of developmental psychology. The baby notices immediately. They try to get her back, they smile bigger, they point, they vocalize, they use every tool they have, every signal that has ever worked before, to restart the conversation that just stopped. Nothing. They try harder. More urgency, more gestures, more sounds. Still nothing. And then something happens that researchers were not prepared for. The baby collapses. Not metaphorically, physically. The system becomes so overwhelmed, the nervous system so flooded by the failure to reconnect, that some babies lose postural control entirely. They slump, they go flat. They mirror the blankness back at her as if the part of them that was reaching for connection simply shut down. 2 minutes. That's all it took. And here's what made the finding even more significant. When the mother re-engaged, when her face came back online and she returned to normal interaction, the baby's joy was immediate. Recovery happened fast, but it wasn't complete. Researchers documented what they called a carryover effect. Even after the mother returned, elevated negativity persisted. More crying, more expressions of distress, more difficulty regulating back to the calm, engaged state the baby had been in before. 2 minutes of an absent face left a mark that outlasted the reunion. Now think about what this means in real life. Not the still face experiment, the still face of everyday life. The moments when you're physically present but mentally somewhere else. When your baby looks up and finds eyes that are looking at a screen. When they reach for your face and your face is pointed somewhere else. When the interaction starts and you respond, but a second late or half-heartedly or without the aliveness that tells a baby's nervous system that a real person is actually there. Those moments are not as dramatic as Tronick's experiment, but they accumulate. And what the still face research ultimately showed, across decades of follow-up studies, is that a baby's experience of their caregiver's emotional responsiveness predicts something that goes far beyond the moment. Variations in the still face response predicted attachment classification at 1 year. They predicted internalizing problems, anxiety, withdrawal in later childhood. They predicted externalizing problems, aggression, behavioral dysregulation, years after the experiment ended. Your face is not background. It is not decoration. It is not something your baby glances at occasionally for reassurance. It is the first dataset they ever use to answer the most fundamental question their brain asks. Is there someone here? Is this world responsive? Is it safe to keep reaching? Every time your face is present, really present, alive, available, looking back, you are answering yes, and that answer is being filed permanently in the architecture of a brain that is deciding right now what kind of world it lives in. But your face is the second act, and the third one is something your baby doesn't just want. Their brain is literally wired to need it. Number 3, the third act, and touch them. In the 1970s, hospitals were doing everything right. Premature babies in incubators received precise nutrition, perfect temperature, constant medical monitoring. every measurable variable optimized, every physical need met, and some of them were still failing to thrive. Then someone introduced something that seemed almost too simple to matter: skin-to-skin contact, a parent's bare chest, a baby placed directly on top of it for extended periods every day. The results were so significant that researchers initially questioned whether they were measuring correctly. Oxygen saturation improved, cortisol dropped, weight gain accelerated. Babies who had been failing began stabilizing. The only variable that changed was contact with a human body. But that was the 1970s. And you might think, that's premature babies. That's an extreme situation. That doesn't tell me anything about my healthy baby at home. Here's what the research says about your healthy baby at home. A randomized controlled trial at Florida Atlantic University followed 33 mother-baby pairs through the first 3 months of life. One group received 1 hour per day of skin-to-skin contact. The other did not. At 3 months, EEG recordings showed that babies in the contact group had measurably greater activation in the left frontal region of the brain, the area associated with higher cognition and emotional regulation, compared to the control group. 1 hour a day, 6 weeks, visible on a brain scan. Then Stanford published findings in the Journal of Pediatrics in 2024. They followed 181 premature babies and found that just 20 additional minutes per day of skin-to-skin contact produced a 10-point increase on standardized cognitive development scales at 12 months. 10 points from 20 minutes of touch. And in 2025, researchers at Weill, Cornell, and Stanford published brain imaging results showing that skin-to-skin contact was associated with measurable structural changes in the neural tracts, responsible for socio-emotional development and stress regulation. Not behavioral changes, structural ones. The physical architecture of the brain, shaped by whether someone held them. John Bowlby, whose attachment theory became the foundation of developmental psychology, was explicit about this. The drive to seek physical proximity is not a preference. It is not a phase. It is the most fundamental biological programming in the human infant. Seeking closeness is wired in because closeness, throughout human evolutionary history, was the difference between survival and death. That wiring doesn't disappear because we live in houses now. Your baby reaches for you not because they want comfort in some vague emotional sense. They reach for you because their nervous system is running a program that is hundreds of thousands of years old. A program that says, the body of a caregiver is where regulation happens, where cortisol drops, where the brain gets the signal that it is safe to grow. Every time you pick them up, every time you hold them against your chest, every time you let them fall asleep in your arms instead of putting them down the moment their eyes close, you're giving their brain something that no incubator, no bassinet, no perfectly engineered sleep environment can provide. You are providing the input that the brain was expecting. And the research is unambiguous about what happens when that input arrives consistently. The brain builds differently, better, more organized, more capable of regulation, more prepared for everything that comes after. Touch is not a luxury. It is not something you do when you have time. It is not something you'll phase out as they get older. It is the third act. And it is building something you can measure on a brain scan. But there is a fourth act that almost every parenting philosophy gets completely backwards because it looks like letting go. And it is actually the deepest form of holding on. Number 4, the fourth act. Let them leave and be there when they return. Watch a securely attached baby in a room full of toys. They start close to you, and then, slowly, they move away towards something interesting, something on the floor that caught their attention. They explore for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and then they come back. Not because anything went wrong, not because they got hurt or scared. They come back simply to check, to touch base with whatever you are to them before going back out again. This is not clinginess. This is not dependency. This is the secure base in action. Mary Ainsworth spent years observing mother-baby pairs, looking for the pattern that separated children who would form healthy relationships from those who wouldn't. What she found became one of the most replicated findings in developmental psychology. Securely attached babies use their caregiver as a base, a point of origin, the place they return to before going out again. And the consistent presence of a responsive caregiver creates something inside the baby that makes exploration feel possible. Safety doesn't make babies stay close. It makes them brave enough to leave. This is the paradox most parents get exactly backwards. Mothers who respond consistently, who are present when the baby returns, who don't push exploration before the baby is ready, these mothers end up with children who are more independent, more curious, more willing to take risks. Not less independent, more. Because independence isn't built by removing the safety net. It's built by trusting that the safety net will be there. Ainsworth's strange situation procedure made this visible. The securely attached babies, the ones who cried when the parent left and calmed when they returned, showed up differently at every subsequent stage of development. Better self-esteem in childhood, better conflict resolution in adolescence, more resilient relationships in adulthood. Not because their parents were perfect, because their parents were there. Every time you let them leave without grabbing them back, every time they return and you receive them, you are teaching them that the world is safe enough to move through, and that you will always be there when they come back. But there is a fifth act, and it is the one most mothers are already doing every single day, without realizing that what sounds like talking to themselves is actually one of the most powerful inputs a developing brain can receive. Number 5, the fifth act, narrate their world. You're warming a bottle, and without really thinking about it, you say out loud, "Let's get your milk ready, it's almost done." Your baby can't understand a word of that. They don't know what milk is. They don't know what almost means. And you are building their brain anyway. Language isn't learned the moment a child starts speaking. It's been under construction for months, years, before the first word ever comes out. Every word spoken in context, every sentence that connects a sound to an experience, is being filed, categorized, added to a system that is quietly assembling itself in real time. Patricia Kuhl at the University of Washington spent years studying exactly how this happens. What she found was clear. Babies don't learn language from passive exposure, not from television, not from background noise, not from any educational audio program ever designed. They learn it from people, from real contingent back and forth interaction with a human being who is paying attention to them. The social context isn't a nice addition to language learning. It is the mechanism. Remove it, and the learning drops dramatically, regardless of how much language the baby hears. This is why narrating the world to your baby isn't just sweet. It is providing the exact input the system was built to receive. Every sentence is a data point. Every time you respond to their babble as if it meant something, you are teaching them the most fundamental truth about communication before they have a single word to speak it with, that their voice has effect, that when they reach out, something reaches back. And that belief, built in the gap between a babble and your response, is one of the most important things a person will ever learn about themselves. Now go back to where we started, you at the end of a long day, wondering if the simple things were enough. They were more than enough. Every time you answered when they called neural architecture, every time your face showed up present, their first emotional language, every time you held them, brain structure changing in ways visible on a scan, every time you let them explore and stayed available, teaching them the world is safe, every time you talk to them about nothing, handing them the tools to eventually talk back. These 5 acts are not extras. They are the real work. Biological expectations built into the human brain over hundreds of thousands of years. The inputs the developing mind was designed to receive. You were already doing them. Now you know what you were building. Tell me in the comments, which of these 5 acts surprised you most? The one you were already doing without knowing how much it mattered. And if this changed how you see the ordinary moments of your day. The next video is about what happens inside your baby's brain the moment you say their name. Just their name. What researchers found about that specific sound is something no other word can replicate. You will never say their name the same way again.